I spent $200,000. Kenny, who didn't even come to my mom's funeral, had suddenly flown overseas. $200,000. What did you do with all that money? Remember our nice piano at home? I sold the dude. Being from a rich family has its perks. It was a good piano. I never thought it would sell for $200,000. Kenny thought the piano at home was his, but he was wrong. My condolences. I get all the inheritance from the family estate. But that piano was actually bought by our grandpa for my brother, so it's still his. My brother loves that piano and teaches piano now. He left it at our house because it's too big for his place. If my brother finds out we sold it without asking him, he'll be really mad. Just giving him money won't fix it. When I told Kenny this, he hung up right away. Hi, I'm Rachel Schneider, a 45-year-old office worker. My family has a long history tracing back to colonial times and is quite prominent in our community. Thanks to my late father's successful business, we now possess assets worth $9 million. Originally, my older brother was set to inherit the family estate, but he chose love over inheritance, opting to forego his rights to marry his girlfriend, who needed an heir for her family's wealth. This decision left me with the task of finding a spouse to carry on our family name. Despite my desire for independence and reluctance to rely on family wealth, I focused solely on my career, and before I knew it, I was in my mid-40s and still single. Realizing the urgency of continuing our family line, I decided to take action and attended a singles mixer. It was there that I met Kenny, my current husband. Surprisingly, he's 10 years younger than me, but at the event, he showed no interest in the younger women and approached me directly. I'm not sure if you're okay with someone my age, I asked him multiple times. But Kenny gazed into my eyes and replied, I'm a bit shy and not very assertive. I've always been attracted to older, more grounded women. Kenny's demeanor matched his words, gentle and reserved. I sensed he could bring a sense of calm to my family, which tends to be assertive. As our relationship blossomed, there was something important I needed to share with him. My mother had been ill and bedridden for the past year, and my sister-in-law, Catherine, and I were taking turns caring for her. Considering our age and the prospect of marriage, I struggled with how to reveal this to Kenny. Eventually, on our third date, I mustered the courage to tell him. To my relief, he not only accepted but also proposed, expressing his willingness to assist with caregiving. His kindness deeply moved me. At least, that's how I initially felt. Kenny works as a daycare teacher, but just 4 months into our marriage, he expressed a sudden desire to quit his job. When I inquired about the reason, he wore a remorseful expression and said, Sorry, Rachel. The parents at the daycare are too demanding and complain a lot. I can't handle it anymore. It was evident that Kenny was struggling, appearing so timid. Normally, I would have encouraged him to persevere, but with him assisting in my mother's care and my pregnancy progressing, I remained silent. However, I soon began to regret my leniency. One day, as I exited the shower and approached the bedroom, I overheard Kenny whispering on the phone. What I heard left me shocked and unsettled. I managed to tie the knot without her suspecting a thing. I'm jobless. She bought my story about quitting work hook, line, and sinker. Little does she know, I ditched that job 2 years back. His conversation seemed directed at a friend on the other end of the line. A faint male voice responded, You're quite the operator. Rachel's family is loaded, so I thought I hit the jackpot when I met her at that singles event. But let's face it, given her age, I was probably her only option. I felt duped. Was the sweet Kenny I fell for all an act? I wanted to confront him right then and there, but the thought of the baby stopped me cold. With Kenny's true colors revealed, I began to doubt our future. Today, Catherine will be looking after my mom until 5:00 p.m. Then it's my turn. I debated whether to confide in someone about Kenny. That's when my brother's wife, Catherine, approached me. Rachel, you seem troubled. If there's anything on your mind, feel free to share, Catherine said, her kindness evident, having cared for her own mother for years and now mine. She's really good with Mom too. So I confided in her about Kenny, and she listened attentively. It's good you opened up. Keeping it to yourself could harm your unborn child, she reassured me. Yeah, I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Talking won't solve everything, but it does lighten the load. Still, this situation is quite something. Catherine looked genuinely concerned, almost as if it were her own problem. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Kenny walked in without waiting for an answer. Both of us were surprised, but Kenny acted as if nothing was wrong and smiled. Rachel, I'll be helping with your mom's care from now on. You're not in the safe period yet, so I don't want you to strain yourself, Kenny said, playing the gentleman in front of me. Really? Okay, let me show you how to care for her. No, I'll learn from Catherine. You just rest at home. Well, my brother's coming home early today, so we won't need her help. Upon hearing that, Catherine looked at me, shaking her head, as if to say, it's okay. She might confront Kenny and get the full story once I'm gone. With that in mind, I decided to leave it to her and head home. But I couldn't shake my worry, so I pretended to leave but hid nearby. Catherine tried to start a conversation with Kenny, but he beat her to it. I've been meaning to ask, why are you taking care of your mother-in-law in this house? He asked, using the same tone as on the phone. Well, my husband's busy, and Rachel has her job. But more importantly, why you ask? Then Kenny interrupted. What? And began hurling insults at Catherine. You live in such a wealthy home. You'd have enough money to put your mother-in-law in a care facility, wouldn't you? Or is it something else? Did your husband give up his claim to this family's wealth? So you're trying to curry favor by taking care of her? That must be it. You'd be pretty upset if you married into money and didn't get a piece of the inheritance, wouldn't you? It was cruel. I was furious too, ready to leave the room. But just as I was about to, Catherine, noticing me, signaled with her eyes to stay put. Reluctantly, I remained silent and watched the scene unfold. You've hit a nerve, haven't you? If that's the case, leave right now. This family's wealth belongs to my wife and me, so I'll handle my mother-in-law's care alone from now on. With Kenny's stern declaration, Catherine felt it was pointless to argue further and left the scene. Sensing the tension, I discreetly stepped outside, concerned about Catherine's feelings and wondering how to apologize to her. Kenny took over Mom's care entirely, refusing any assistance from me. He only provided basic instructions on caregiving. But his neglectful approach led to tragic consequences, and our mother passed away. The funeral took place at the church where generations of our family had been laid to rest. However, Kenny was nowhere to be found from the moment Mom passed away. Despite my attempts to locate him, I was too overwhelmed with funeral arrangements to pursue the matter. Relatives and neighbors were puzzled by his absence. Catherine, grief-stricken at the altar, apologized for trusting Kenny with Mom's care. Approaching her, I tried to offer some comfort. Catherine, please don't blame yourself. It's not your fault. Rachel, it's not your fault either. But where is that man? I wanted to confront him today, and he disappears just as Mom passes away. Exactly. And didn't Kenny often leave the house while he was supposed to be caring for Mom? Where was he going? Yes, neighbors mentioned he was frequently out, almost as if he wasn't caregiving at all, just loafing around. They also mentioned a big truck that came by once. What was that about? I wanted to ask, but with the funeral, I didn't bring it up. Days passed, and Kenny still hadn't returned. Then, I received a call from him. Hey, Rachel, I'm in a fancy hotel in Europe, like the ones you see on TV travel shows, Kenny said nonchalantly. Kenny, you missed Mom's funeral, and now this. I spent $200,000. $200,000? Where did you get that kind of money? Remember the grand piano at our family home? I sold it. Who knew it was worth $200,000? Kenny confessed to selling the family's cherished grand piano and squandering the money on luxury travel in Europe. I never imagined Kenny would pull something like this while supposed to be caring for Mom. Our family home had tight security, but with family, it's different. That truck must have been there to move the piano. Why would you do something so selfish? The whole family was worried about you missing the funeral. Well, once you have a kid, you won't have much free time. Since you have a job, I guess I'll have to be the stay-at-home dad. Kenny's words left me stunned. Despite my anger, his willingness to take on childcare was a silver lining. But it seemed he was aiming to live off me. Additionally, Kenny seemed to think the piano belonged to me. Confronting Kenny, who had unknowingly sold a piano and spent the money, I started with, "My condolences." "Huh? What do you mean?" Kenny seemed bewildered, so I explained about the piano. "That piano belonged to my grandfather, bought for my brother. So it still belongs to him." "Oh, really? I'll just apologize to your brother then," Kenny replied, lacking any remorse for selling someone else's property. Kenny only met my brother at our wedding, so it's understandable he didn't know. My brother is a piano teacher and has loved the piano since childhood. He begged our grandfather for that specific piano. Although there's no room for it in his house now, it's still his. He even dreams of starting his own school with it. The piano means everything to him. I can only imagine what punishment he'll have for you when he hears it was sold without permission. By the way, my brother despises dishonesty. As I explained, Kenny remained silent. Understand? Mere compensation won't suffice when he finds out you sold his beloved piano. He's not one to compromise. I wonder what punishment awaits you. Without warning, the call abruptly ended. He's probably regretting it now. I called my brother and told him everything. Needless to say, he was furious. The next day, Kenny rushed home, finding everyone gathered in the living room. "What's going on? Why is everyone here?" Kenny asked nervously. "I heard everything from Rachel," my brother said sternly. "What possessed you to sell someone else's property, especially something so valuable, without consulting the family?" Kenny tried to justify himself, visibly shaken. I was just trying to pitch in with the household chores out of boredom. When I saw the old, large grand piano, I figured no one was using it anymore. So you decided to sell it. Yeah, it seemed like a waste to just leave it there. My brother, wearing a stern expression, pressed further. Really? That piano was special, imported by our grandfather from a top European manufacturer. Where's the money from the sale? As anticipated, my brother was playing his part well. Everyone probably knew Kenny had spent all the money on an overseas trip, but my brother was aiming for a confession in front of everyone. Kenny seemed lost in thought, struggling to come up with an excuse. The sales money. Yeah, it hasn't come in yet. Kenny stammered, clearly flustered, but my brother wasn't buying it. You're lying? How deceitful can you get? And what about those souvenirs from Europe in that huge suitcase? Kenny recoiled as if struck by lightning, closing his eyes in shame. I'm sorry, I spent all the money. Kenny's admission left the relatives murmuring in shock. Everyone knew the value of that grand piano. They couldn't fathom how Kenny could blow $200,000 on just one trip overseas. My brother, looking down at Kenny, lifted his chin with his hand, locking eyes with him as he said, "As Rachel probably told you, that piano was mine. Now that it's gone, you'll repay every penny. If you can't, I'll sue you for theft. Are we clear?" My brother's intensity was palpable, almost resembling a mob boss. While this would typically be a family matter, my brother was likely using intimidation tactics, knowing Kenny was clueless about the law. Predictably, Kenny lost his voice and began sweating profusely. Then, with a terrified glance at me, he pleaded, "Rachel, please help me." His voice was desperate, but I had no intention of intervening. This mess was entirely of his own making. When I rejected his plea, Kenny resorted to a ludicrous argument, saying, "Don't be so cold. I looked after your mom while you were pregnant. I saw the trip as a reward for myself after caregiving. Let's just say we both agreed to sell the piano this way. Since we're siblings, it can't be considered theft, right?" I was so dumbfounded that my mouth hung open, unable to form a response. It was Catherine who stepped in to defend me. "That's enough. Didn't you tell Rachel not to assist with caregiving? You even accused me of being after the inheritance and tried to push me away. Kenny, did you say such awful things to my wife too? Yes, I didn't want to worry you, so I kept quiet. But this man must have been scheming to sell the piano without letting Rachel and me near the family home. Catherine's words resonated with me, remembering how Kenny prevented me from getting close to the family home when he said he'd handle our parents alone. I reached the same conclusion. My brother's anger flared up once more. Listen closely. My wife cared for Mom because she wanted her to stay out of a facility. She agreed out of kindness, not for money. First, apologize to my wife right now. With my brother grabbing Kenny by the collar, tears welled up in Kenny's eyes as he knelt before Catherine. I'm so sorry, Catherine. Kenny's apology for his disrespectful behavior towards Catherine didn't soften the cold gazes of the relatives. Then, one of them shouted at Kenny. You need to repay the money from the piano sale promptly. We can't tolerate a criminal in the Schneider family. It'll stain our name. Misinterpreting the situation once more, Kenny made another peculiar remark. Exactly. We can't have a criminal in the family, right, bro? So let's keep calm. We'll work together as a couple to repay the debt gradually. Even my uncle was left speechless by Kenny's illogical response. Feeling that further discussion would be futile, I excused myself to retrieve something from my room. Ever since the phone incident, I had a divorce lawyer's business card ready. Kenny, call this number. I want our marriage to end. Let's handle things through legal channels. Kenny's face drained of color when he saw the business card I handed him. Why? We're expecting a baby. Why are you doing this? At that moment, I disclosed what Kenny had said to everyone on the phone. You heard that. It was just a joke. Do you think that's a valid excuse? I've known all along that you were after my inheritance. Everyone present glared at Kenny, realizing there was no way to justify his actions. Kenny responded with defiance, unwilling to admit his wrongdoing. Rachel, please, I need your help, Kenny pleaded in desperation. He explained that the buyer of the grand piano he sold wanted to return it and get a refund. When Kenny had sold the piano, he claimed it was in perfect condition. However, upon inspection, the buyer discovered a large engraving on the back indicating my brother's ownership. It seemed Kenny hadn't checked thoroughly. Instead of selling it through a reputable dealer, he likely chose a shady one enticed by offers like completely free, and now he faced the consequences. Kenny had to refund $200,000 to the buyer, a significant sum considering his debt to my brother. Despite Kenny's attempt to file for bankruptcy, my brother and I took legal action to prevent it. Now, burdened with more debt, Kenny worked tirelessly in manual labor. Eventually, the heirloom grand piano was safely returned. Relieved, my brother secured it with a strong lock and installed a security camera in the room, exercising caution. No one will touch that piano until I begin my piano lessons, my brother declared, unchanged from his childhood self, which brought a smile to my face. With his desire to start a piano school at our family home, I decided to discuss sharing our mother's inheritance. Feeling guilty for inheriting everything alone after Catherine's devoted care for our mother, I proposed the idea to my brother, who agreed. It ensured a positive relationship with his family in the future. And so, I welcomed a long-awaited baby girl. While some relatives hoped for an heir, I believe daughters tend to cherish their mothers longer in today's age. Besides, my mother, an only daughter herself, accepted a son-in-law, so if necessary, my daughter could do the same. Embracing single motherhood, I found unwavering support from Catherine, who had finished raising her own children. Grateful for her assistance during my mother's care, I felt deeply indebted to her. My brother eagerly volunteered to be a father figure for my daughter, his excitement palpable. Additionally, my brother and Catherine's 2 adult daughters, both kindergarten teachers, shared his passion for the piano, bonding with my daughter. Surrounded by such warmth and support, I felt immensely fortunate, and with gratitude, I resolved to face life's challenges head-on with my daughter by my side.
Melissa felt really sad after her grandma passed away. She missed her a lot. Her grandma used to say that everything would be okay and that she believed in Melissa. Those were some of the last things her grandma said before she died. Melissa and her grandma lived together since Melissa was born. She never knew her parents and didn't want to make her grandma sad by asking about them. Melissa thought maybe her parents left her because they had other things to do. Lots of people visited Melissa's grandma. Some were nice and some were not. Melissa would stay in her room when they came over because she didn't want to bother them. She knew her grandma was helping them with things. As Melissa got older, she started to understand more about the world. She realized it was different from what she thought before. Melissa thought her grandma knew a lot of things that others didn't, and as she grew up, she started to understand those things too. Sometimes it made her cry because it was scary. One day, Melissa was crying in her room again. Her grandma heard her and came in quietly to see if she was okay. Melissa said she was fine, so her grandma came in and asked what was wrong. Melissa told her grandma that she was scared. Her grandma gave her a hug and asked why she was scared. Melissa told her grandma everything. Her grandma hugged her tightly and said she was worried this might happen, that Melissa would inherit her gift. After her grandma passed away, Melissa didn't know what to do. She was only 15 and worried she would have to go to an orphanage and then to a foster home. Melissa didn't want that, so she decided to run away and hide somewhere far away. She didn't know why she made that decision, but she hoped it would work out somehow. Mr. Wesley Harris kissed his daughter on the forehead and promised to come home earlier. Chelsea sighed and told her dad it was okay for him to be at work a lot. She reassured him that she would be fine. Wesley suggested having a movie night to cheer her up. Chelsea agreed with her dad, saying she'd be okay and wanted to talk to him about something. "What is it, sweetheart?" Mr. Harris asked. Chelsea asked if they could try to find someone. "Are you sure, honey?" her father asked, concerned. Chelsea didn't want a caregiver who only did medical stuff and treated her like a kid. She wanted someone she could talk to. She didn't like the nurses from agencies because they felt fake and cold, like robots following rules. She wanted someone real. Wesley kissed his daughter again and promised to find a solution. As he went to work, he couldn't shake off how strange life had become. Just 5 years ago, he had a happy family, but now his wife had died in a car crash, and his daughter was seriously ill and bedridden. Despite spending a lot on her medicine, Chelsea's health was deteriorating, and the doctors weren't hopeful. At first, Chelsea's illness wasn't so scary. She got treatment and seemed like any other kid, but things took a turn for the worse. Chelsea started losing weight fast and became very weak. It had been a year, and she could barely leave her bed. Lately, she'd been in more pain, and it broke Wesley's heart to see her suffer. Despite doctors' prescriptions, the painkillers didn't seem to help much, and Chelsea was becoming resistant to stronger ones. When Wesley arrived at work, his driver asked if he could leave early because his wife was being discharged from the hospital. "Congratulations. Of course, go ahead. Let me know if you need anything," Wesley said. The driver thanked him and asked if he could take a day off tomorrow. "Sure, take it. By the way, is it a boy or a girl?" "It's a girl. We named her Melissa." Wesley smiled and complimented the name Melissa. He wished his driver congratulations again and headed to his office. Despite the bustling activity around him, life seemed dull and dreary at home. While others celebrated weddings and births, his family silently waited for what would come next. The hardest part for Wesley was staying strong and not crumbling under the weight of it all. He tried his best to support Chelsea and smiled as much as he could. Chelsea was smart and mature, handling her condition remarkably well. But it pained Wesley to see her confined to her bed, knowing there was little hope for improvement. His secretary interrupted his thoughts, asking him to sign some papers. "Andy, I need your help. I'm looking for someone to spend time with my daughter. Not from an agency, someone real." "That's tricky. Maybe someone her age or someone in need of a place to stay," Andy suggested. "Yeah, we could try that. Okay, give me the papers," Wesley said, ready to explore this idea. Wesley finished his work early to keep his promise to Chelsea. He decided to stop by a convenience store to buy her some sweets, even though the housekeeper and doctor said she shouldn't have sugar. Wesley knew a chocolate bar would make her happy, even if it wasn't the healthiest choice. As he left the store, he noticed a girl standing outside who seemed troubled. Despite not looking homeless, Wesley felt she needed help. He approached her and asked if she needed assistance. The girl was initially scared but then smiled and asked for some spare change. She explained she was out of money and hungry. Wesley spotted a nearby restaurant and offered to buy her some food. "Thank you so much, sir. This is really embarrassing," the girl said. "No need to feel embarrassed. Let's get you something to eat," Wesley replied kindly. As they walked to the restaurant, Wesley couldn't help but think about the girl's age. She seemed to be about 15 or 16, just like his daughter Chelsea. But there was something in her eyes that made her seem bolder. The girl ate eagerly, and watching her made Wesley hungry too. Suddenly, he had an idea. "I'm sorry, I never asked your name," Wesley said. "I'm Melissa," the girl replied. "Melissa, where are your parents? Do you live with them?" Melissa paused. "I don't really know them. I used to live with my grandma in a trailer park, but she passed away 7 months ago, so I moved to the city." "Do you have somewhere to stay?" Wesley asked. Melissa shrugged. "I was staying with my grandma's friend for a while, helping out around the house, but then her kids took her to another city." "So, you're saying you have nowhere to go?" Wesley asked. Melissa nodded. "I guess not. Would you like to come live with us? I have a daughter," Wesley offered. "Is she sick?" "How do you know?" Melissa asked, surprised. Melissa noticed Wesley's confusion and explained how she figured out he had a daughter who was sick. "You're pretty sharp. How old are you?" Wesley asked. "I'll be 16 soon," Melissa replied. "Do you have any identification with you?" Wesley inquired. "It's at the mall nearby. A nice janitor lets me keep my stuff there. Sometimes I help him clean and he lets me stay," Melissa explained. Wesley considered the situation. He liked Melissa. "So, what do you think? Want to come live with us? We have a nurse and a housekeeper. My daughter just needs someone to talk to," Wesley offered. "I understand. Yeah, I can do that," Melissa agreed. "You barely know me, yet you agreed to come with me," Wesley remarked. "Don't worry. I trust you," Melissa replied. "How much do you think I should pay you?" Wesley asked. "You don't have to pay me anything," Melissa said, kindly declining. Wesley thought Melissa was very innocent and genuine. They were in a car, driving past the bright lights of the city, and Melissa was gazing out the window. Wesley saw this as an opportunity to discuss his daughter. "So, Melissa, let me tell you about Chelsea." "You don't really have to. If she wants to, she'll share her story with me when she's ready," Melissa replied. Wesley agreed with a nod. He was still perplexed and curious about where Melissa had actually come from. When they got to his house, Wesley first showed Melissa her bedroom. She really liked it. "It's beautiful. I've never had a bed like that." "Make yourself at home. You can unpack while I step out for a bit," Wesley said. Melissa was thrilled with her own bedroom. She meticulously unpacked her belongings and arranged her clothes tightly in the closet. After finishing, Melissa silently left her room and walked into the hallway where Wesley was walking towards her. He stopped and said that it was time for her to meet Chelsea. Chelsea was sitting in her bed, looking out the window. "Hey, honey." Chelsea slowly turned around and smiled. "Hey, Dad." "Melissa, this is my daughter, Chelsea, and Chelsea, this is Melissa." Wesley introduced them. "Nice to meet you, Melissa," Chelsea said, looking at Melissa with great interest. "She is a really nice young lady. I'm sure you will get along well and make really good friends," Wesley added. "All right, you two go ahead and get to know each other. I'll go change," Wesley said. Melissa slowly walked over to Chelsea's bed and looked at her without saying anything. "Hi," she said. "Hi," Chelsea replied. Chelsea could feel that Melissa was looking deep into her soul. She had a weird feeling. Chelsea was a bit frightened and looked at Melissa, but then Melissa smiled. "Don't be scared. Everything's gonna be all right," Melissa said. Gradually, the awkward tension between them subsided, and they started talking. By the time Wesley came back, Chelsea was laughing. As he walked in and saw them, he froze. He hadn't seen her beaming and heard this laughter for the last couple of years. Melissa was telling her how her grandma would have herbal teas every time to make her memory better. She kept losing her shiny things and thought that she was forgetting them somewhere, and it turned out that a magpie was flying in and stealing them. "Are you guys having fun?" Chelsea turned to her dad and said, "We are." With that, Wesley said that dinner would be ready in an hour. He was expecting a refusal from his daughter as usual. This time, Chelsea said, "Dad, do you think we can move my bed to the kitchen? I want to eat there." Wesley was shocked. "Of course, honey. Let me get the chair instead." They had purchased a special chair for her a long time ago, but Chelsea never used it. She had totally been against it. Wesley instructed the housekeeper to prepare a table for 3 people, which surprised her. However, when she noticed Chelsea chatting animatedly with another girl, she quickly got to work. Chelsea couldn't eat a lot, but she had a hearty appetite. It was peculiar and uncommon. It was the first time she ate well. For a brief moment, Wesley began to question what the doctors had told him, but he realized that doctors from 3 different countries can be wrong at the same time. Before going to bed, Melissa noticed that Chelsea was curled up in pain. "Melissa, can you call the housekeeper? I need a shot," Chelsea said. But Melissa walked up to Chelsea and put her palm on top of her head. After a minute, Chelsea began to feel that the pain was subsiding. She had never felt anything like that before. She wanted to ask how Melissa was doing that, but she couldn't. Her eyes were drooping, and she felt like she was falling asleep. Melissa stood up to shut the door and saw the housekeeper hurrying to give Chelsea a shot. "Excuse me, ma'am, she's better. She fell asleep." "What do you mean she's sleeping? What about The housekeeper appeared inside and saw Chelsea was indeed asleep. "That's impossible." 2 weeks passed, and Chelsea had changed a lot. Wesley was astonished. He saw how Melissa was leading her by the hand carefully. For the first time in the last few years, Chelsea got out into the yard. Wesley couldn't believe what he was seeing, but he was still wary that it could be something temporary. "Mr. Harris, where did you find this girl?" the housekeeper asked. "You won't believe it, but I met her on the street outside a store." "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine. I mean, I don't know how to say this, but she's a bit strange. She knows everything. The other day she predicted that it was going to rain in 10 minutes. She told me that my son's sore throat needs to be treated with some kind of herb. I mean, look how much Chelsea has changed. Are you telling me she's some kind of clairvoyant or something?" "I don't know. I don't really believe those things, but I just don't understand how." Wesley smiled, but he agreed with the housekeeper. Melissa had a piercing gaze. In the morning, Wesley was getting ready for work. Melissa walked out to him from her room. "Mr. Harris, do you have to go to work today?" "Yes. Is everything okay? Can you stay home today, please?" "Why, Melissa? What's going on?" "I have a lot of things to do at the office." Melissa kept begging him not to go anywhere and to tell his driver to stay in the city today. Wesley didn't know why he agreed to listen to her. In the end, he decided he could probably work from home today. When he turned on the TV, he saw that there was a terrible accident on the highway involving a dozen cars. It happened exactly at the exit he was supposed to take and at around the time he usually passes through that area. He immediately got a call from his driver. The driver talked for a while and thanked Mr. Harris for letting him stay in the city today. Wesley got up and headed for Melissa's room. He couldn't take it anymore. He really wanted to know who she really was. He knocked on her door, but there was no response. Then he walked towards Chelsea's room, and as he was approaching, he heard loud noises. They were arguing about something. He stood behind a slightly open door and looked through. Melissa was shouting at Chelsea. "Get up now." "I can't." "Who told you you can't?" "But I'm really sick. I can't walk." "I'm not supposed to walk." "But you're still alive. Give me your hand." Wesley froze because Chelsea put her right foot on the floor, then the left, and then she got up. She wobbled immediately, and Wesley was about to lunge, but Melissa had already had her shoulder up for her. "There you go. Good job, Chelsea," Melissa told her. "And you were telling me you were destined to be in bed." Chelsea burst out laughing.
"We can split up if you want, but I want to stay with our son," John said firmly after scolding me. He seemed satisfied as he took a deep breath. As I thought about how to respond, our son, who had been standing by, stepped forward. "Dad, if you don't know, let me tell you," he said, pointing at his father's mistress. Our son's words made me smile mischievously. "My name's Jennifer. I'm 42 years old and work as a freelance artist. I've been married for 15 years and have an 8th grade son. Since we got married, John has struggled to hold down a job. So I've been the main breadwinner, juggling work, household chores, and raising our child. I've had to work from home because John's jobs were unstable, leaving me to care for our son. It was tough at first, but now I have a stable income from illustrating educational materials, thanks to referrals from previous clients. With David getting older, I can work from home and go out for projects a few times a week. So the 3 of us are living together peacefully. But there's something on my mind about John. Despite my steady income, he doesn't seem motivated to find a new job and seems lost. I'm concerned about him being 44 and not having a clear direction. He rarely works full-time, so he should have free time. But he doesn't help much around the house or with our son David. This has been the pattern since we got married, so I've stopped expecting much from him. He doesn't seem interested in David, who's going through tough teenage years, which bothers me. David isn't very talkative, but he sometimes helps with chores without me asking. Maybe he's learned from seeing me manage work and chores since he was young. David has matured a lot, but John hasn't. Lately, John's been coming home late more often, adding to my unease and frustration. It's natural to feel suspicious. Even on days when he's not supposed to work, he claims to have work-related reasons to leave. But I doubt he's secretly job hunting without telling us. There are some things that make me feel suspicious. Recently, John hasn't been spending much time looking after David. He's taken a sudden interest in driving him to and from his basketball club, even though David is just in 8th grade. We have a rule in our household to always drop off and pick up due to safety concerns in today's world. I've always had to fit this around my work schedule, but John started offering to do it lately. While I appreciate the help, something didn't sit right with me. My suspicion grew when I happened to pass by the basketball club one day. I decided to take a different route home after shopping and saw John there, despite him saying he'd be late due to work out of town. He was chatting happily with a woman who seemed to work at the facility. As I stood there, the woman noticed me and asked if I was David's mom. I awkwardly acknowledged her, realizing I hadn't remembered all the staff's faces. I chatted with her briefly, ignoring my husband's tense demeanor. The woman introduced herself as Jessica, but I found it odd that she didn't mention her role with my child. Seeing my confusion, John seemed eager to end their conversation. On the way home, there was an uncomfortable silence between us, and it felt like he was intentionally avoiding me. Despite his seemingly cheerful conversation with Jessica earlier, he walked beside me with his head down, avoiding eye contact. I could sense that something wasn't right. His recent late returns, sudden interest in doing drop-offs and pickups, and strange behavior after being seen with Jessica made me suspect that there was more to their relationship. Could he be having an affair with her? Deep down, I had felt a shift ever since he started taking over the transportation duties. He had become distant from me. That day, when our son returned from the basketball club, I casually asked about his father's behavior, but all I got was a dismissive, "I don't know." It seemed our son was frustrated with his dad's insistence on driving him every day. Forcing our reluctant son to go along with it didn't sit well with me. I had been harboring suspicions for a while now, and it seemed they were about to be confirmed. I was just passing by, so I thought I'd drop in. "David, how are you feeling?" Jessica said as she entered our home. "Thank you for coming all this way, Jessica." "Now please, have some coffee," I replied politely. Jessica, whom I hadn't suspected of being involved with my husband, started finding reasons to visit our home more frequently. She would mention our son occasionally, but it was clear her real motive was something else. Her visits always coincided with the times my husband was home, never when my son or I were alone. Watching them chat cheerfully in the living room confirmed my suspicions of John's infidelity. About a month after I first noticed his odd behavior, he began coming home later and later, sometimes disappearing for days at a time. When I confronted him about sneaking in late one night, he joked about it, but his reaction changed when I mentioned cheating. He snapped at me, telling me to mind my own business and focus on my work. His irritation was evident as he stormed out of the room. I was angry that he acted as if he was doing everything when, in reality, he left all the housework and parenting to me. "What's wrong, Mom?" David, who had been witnessing our arguments, spoke up unexpectedly. "Oh, it's nothing. Why are you still awake?" I deflected, but David seemed hesitant before finally opening up about his suspicions regarding Jessica, whom he believed might be involved with his father. He found her clingy and irritating, especially since she would come to our house uninvited. It was a relief to know that I wasn't alone in disliking her presence, but the situation was far from resolved. When I returned home from a client meeting, I heard laughter coming from the living room. It was John and Jessica. David must have stayed in his room as he didn't join them. As I entered the living room, both John and Jessica turned to look at me. John appeared uncomfortable as usual, while Jessica greeted me with a confident smile. "Welcome back, David's mom," Jessica greeted me as I bumped into John, who then invited me inside. I couldn't shake off the unease I felt about Jessica addressing my husband by his name. "Oh, we seem to run into each other often, don't we? Isn't work keeping you busy?" I retorted with a touch of sarcasm. Jessica replied with a smug expression. "Well, part of my job involves visiting homes." I wanted to lash out at her for being so presumptuous. "What part of your job involves critiquing people's homes?" I wanted to ask, but I held my tongue. Instead, she commented on the cozy atmosphere of our house, insinuating that it wasn't kept very clean. Her sly grin made it clear she was enjoying pointing out my shortcomings. My husband didn't defend me. Instead, he chuckled along with Jessica, even adding that I should do better with the housework since I'm always home. It frustrated me that I was the only one being mocked. Feeling overwhelmed, I quickly retreated to the bedroom, still holding my belongings, overcome with frustration, sadness, and embarrassment. I worried that Jessica might replace me in my family eventually. If she wasn't involved with my son's basketball team, I might have confronted her. But I hesitated for my son's sake. Despite my concerns, my husband and Jessica continued their rendezvous, openly displaying their relationship while I remained silent. People told me they often met under the guise of discussing our son's education. Determined to uncover the truth, I searched for evidence during my husband's absences and discovered plenty of proof of his infidelity. Despite his claims that we couldn't afford gifts for birthdays or anniversaries, I found receipts for motel stays, lavish dinners, and expensive jewelry in his coat pocket. I even found receipts for places he said were too expensive for us to visit. It pained me to think he spent money on his mistress, but not on his wife. Despite my hurt, I stayed composed and continued gathering evidence. Divorce crossed my mind, but I wanted to wait until David graduated high school. Nevertheless, I resolved to gather as much evidence as possible to protect myself. I wondered where my husband got the money for his affair. Even if he used his entire salary, it would be challenging to sustain. Lost in thought, I suddenly remembered our college fund account for David. A wave of dread washed over me as I checked its transactions, revealing large withdrawals over the past few months. I had opened the savings account specifically to secure my son's education funds just in case. It had been a while since I last checked it, and I was shocked to discover that the balance had significantly decreased. Despite meticulously managing our credit card usage and monthly bills, I had neglected to monitor the savings account regularly. The realization hit me hard, and I struggled to steady my trembling hands. The money he spent on his affair came from the savings I had diligently set aside for our son. At that moment, I no longer cared who he was having an affair with. What I couldn't forgive was that he had used the money meant for our child's future for his own selfish desires. His betrayal against me as his wife paled in comparison to the betrayal against our son. Suppressing my boiling anger, I resolved to continue pretending that everything was normal. I didn't want our son, who was at such an impressionable age, to catch on. I chose to shoulder all the problems and worries alone, not wanting to burden our hardworking son with unnecessary stress. However, the strain began to take its toll on me, leading to small mistakes in my household chores and work. Even Mrs. Smith, a longtime client, noticed my worn-out state and expressed her concern. While I struggled, my husband seemed to be enjoying himself with his mistress more than ever. Without my interference, he appeared more relaxed. Sooner or later, our son David would inevitably become aware of the issues surrounding our family. Recognizing my subdued demeanor, David silently offered to help with the laundry, expressing his understanding of the situation. His quiet support warmed my heart and fueled my anger toward the traitor who had jeopardized the money I had saved for our son. There had to be consequences for his betrayal. I contemplated reaching out to someone who had offered to support me, clenching my fists as I swore vengeance against my husband and his mistress. One evening, my husband abruptly announced that he would be away for almost a week due to work. He insisted that he was attending a training program in another state, but I had my doubts about the truthfulness of his explanation. The restaurant chain where he worked only had locations within our state, and there were no offices or branches elsewhere. I distinctly remembered him boasting about this perk when he first took the job, emphasizing that there would be no need to relocate out of state. While my son and I engaged in conversation with him, we both harbored skepticism about his story. My son casually mentioned, one of the staff members from my club is also off work for a week around this time. I don't know if she's going on vacation, but it seems unusual. Going on a week-long vacation requires some cash. Despite our casual tone, my husband appeared startled by our observation. Until then, he had been proudly discussing the rigorous training program he was supposedly attending, but suddenly fell silent and glanced down at his smartphone anxiously. Ever since I became certain of my husband's infidelity, I had been monitoring both him and Jessica closely. I even hired a private investigator who confirmed that Jessica, who worked at the basketball facility, was also taking a week off. I had known all along that my husband's supposed business trip was merely a cover for a romantic getaway with Jessica. While I could have caught him red-handed, I had other plans in mind. I had been scheming since learning of my husband's intentions to travel with Jessica. Naturally, I didn't intend to proceed without my son's agreement, but fortunately, he was on board with my plan. On the day of their trip, I bid farewell to my eager husband, and then my son and I set about cleaning the house. With the assistance of some relatives who came over, we also began packing. Our plan was to relocate while my husband was away and stay elsewhere until we found a new home, temporarily staying with some accommodating relatives. Upon learning of our situation, our relatives, enraged by my husband's actions yet concerned for David, graciously offered us a place to stay. Additionally, I safeguarded our savings by transferring all remaining funds to my personal account, ensuring that my husband couldn't access it. As we made preparations, I noticed my husband's belongings were still in the house as we prepared to leave. It didn't feel right to abandon his things, so after some consideration, I decided to send them to a specific location. With Mrs. Smith's approval, I arranged for a pickup service to collect the boxes. Surveying the neat and tidy house my son and I now shared, we exchanged a satisfied smile. A few days after we had relocated, my phone suddenly rang, startling me in the midst of our temporary stay at my relative's place. Seeing my husband's name on the caller ID, I couldn't help but sigh involuntarily. "Hello, Jennifer," he greeted me. "Hey, what's going on?" "It's the middle of the day," I responded, already anticipating his request. "Actually, during my training, I ran out of money. Can you transfer some funds to my account?" His voice sounded panicked, confirming my suspicions. No wonder our savings account was drained. He couldn't access any funds. His desperation was palpable, more so than usual. Was it because he didn't want to appear inadequate in front of Jessica? Feeling exasperated, I declined his plea, almost amused by his predicament. "Why don't you use the account you always dip into? There should still be plenty left," I suggested with a smirk. After a brief silence, he erupted into angry shouts. "Are you okay with me being broke?" he yelled, but I refused to entertain his outburst. "Your training will be over soon. You'll manage without money," I countered, goading him further. Suddenly, a frantic female voice could be heard in the background. It was the moment I had been waiting for. Surprised by Jessica's voice in the background, my husband abruptly ended the call. With everything falling into place, the next day my son and I headed to a specific location. A grand mansion with immaculate gardens, clearly the residence of affluent individuals. As if on cue, we found my husband and his mistress in a room. My husband looked terrified as he sat on the floor, offering apologies to someone. That someone, with a stern expression, was Mrs. Smith, a longtime client of mine, and the principal of the middle school attended by my son David. Over the years, we had developed a close bond, sharing personal troubles and trusting each other implicitly. My husband's actions have caused trouble, and I must apologize. I began taking responsibility for my husband's misconduct. It turned out that Jessica, who had been on a trip with my husband, was confronted by her parents about a package she had received at home. She had no choice but to return home immediately. And naturally, she insisted that my husband accompany her. Hearing Mrs. Smith's words, my husband trembled with fear. Mrs. Smith had been deeply concerned about my declining health since learning of John's affair. When I finally confided in her about the affair, and she discovered that her daughter was the mistress, she was devastated. However, Mrs. Smith was determined to make amends for her daughter's actions and had been cooperating with me ever since. She offered a heartfelt apology, gesturing toward the piles of boxes, and sternly reprimanded her daughter. "You should be ashamed of yourself for coveting what isn't yours," she scolded. Jessica's attempts to defend herself fell flat, claiming it was all a misunderstanding and questioning the sanity of the sender of numerous packages to their house. Turning to my husband, Jessica pleaded for support, but he remained silent under my disapproving gaze. With a panicked expression, Jessica confessed that she had no idea her mother worked with me and never intended for her strict mother to discover her affair with a married man. Mrs. Smith is a teacher, and she has very strict rules about what's right and wrong. She's not likely to forgive her daughter for what she did, but I didn't feel sorry for Jessica at all. "I want you to say sorry," Mrs. Smith said firmly. "My daughter has to make up for what she did. Even if it takes her whole life, she has to do the right thing." "Why is this happening to me?" Jessica cried, but I didn't pay attention to her. Instead, I looked at my husband, who was standing silently beside her. "Don't you have something to say?" I asked him, feeling angry. Then, unexpectedly, David, who was standing behind me, spoke up. "Jessica isn't just a regular worker. She's only an intern at the club," David said firmly. "And don't you dare try to be friendly with me again. Your flirting with other men is gross." It turned out that Jessica wasn't even officially hired at the club. My husband always thought Jessica was very skilled and passionate about working with students, which I found funny. It turned out they both had secrets. Seeing Jessica's shocked face, I decided to give her some advice before I left. "Did you know that I pay for everything? The rent, our living expenses, and even David's school fees?" I told her. "John has been doing odd jobs for years, but you wouldn't know that." "Hey, hold on a minute." John tried to interrupt, but it was too late. Jessica was so surprised by what I said that she collapsed on the spot. It turned out John had been pretending to have plenty of money, hiding the fact that I was the one supporting our family. He wanted to impress Jessica, so he made it seem like he had everything under control. He made me look lazy and useless in front of her. Mrs. Smith was devastated when she found out the truth about John and Jessica. When David and I happily returned home, we saw John looking defeated, with Jessica and all their things. Mrs. Smith had kicked him out. Months passed since we moved. Following Mrs. Smith's advice, I hired a good lawyer to handle my divorce. Everything went smoothly, and I felt relieved. I even found out that the savings I had put aside for David's education could be used as child support. As for Jessica, rumors spread quickly at the basketball club about her affair with a parent. She lost her job and tried to get help from her parents, but Mrs. Smith wasn't willing to help. Jessica ended up alone and confused. She left John because he didn't have any money, and now he's trying to make things right. But David and I aren't interested. Mrs. Smith felt guilty for what her daughter did to our family. I reassured her and thanked her for helping me find a new job. Life has been good with just David and me, and I'm proud to be David's mom. David's simple words brought tears to my eyes. I want to keep working as an illustrator, but most importantly, I want to be the best mom I can be for David.
I got married to a man who liked me even though I was fragile and shy. I thought we were happy, but while I was in the hospital, My husband met a beautiful divorced woman. He decided to leave me, saying I didn't work and wanted $800 a month as compensation. He went ahead with the divorce coldly. My name's Michelle, and I quietly work in an office at a real estate company. I've never been particularly interested in real estate or office work. Since I was a kid, I've been physically weak and sometimes end up in the hospital because of my internal organs, though it's not life-threatening. People were worried if I could work, especially with my health issues, but my parents suggested I try office work. I've been managing fine, even with occasional hospital stays. I've been doing well at my job, and my colleagues understand my situation. I met my husband Tony at a social gathering set up by a friend, kind of like a group blind date. I wasn't sure about romance because I thought my fragility would be a problem for anyone. I didn't date much, and before I knew it, I was over 30. My friend encouraged me, saying, "You should find someone who understands you, Michelle. Your condition doesn't affect your daily life much. Let's stay positive." So she invited me to an event. I didn't think it would work out. There were 3 men, one of whom I liked, but he seemed interested in another woman. I didn't feel particularly attractive, and the other women there seemed prettier. I had given up on finding someone there, but then Tony, who later became my husband, approached me. He was thoughtful, offering me soft drinks since I didn't drink much. But as I listened to him, I realized he wasn't the one I wanted to be close to. I dreamed of marrying someone like a top actress. Hearing his confidence made me wonder about him and even feel a bit repelled. However, despite that, he kept talking to me. He asked, "What kind of guy do you like, Michelle? Do you want to get married?" Because I was eager to get married soon, Tony kept talking to me, showing persistence. At first, I thought he was shallow, but we exchanged contacts. Surprisingly, Tony kept contacting me frequently, even asking me out. Gradually, my feelings for him grew. However, I was still worried. Why would a man with high standards and a seemingly shallow nature be interested in someone like me? When I shared my concerns about my fragile health with a friend, they explained that guys often want to appear strong and impressive at first. Despite that, my friend said Tony really seemed to like me. Believing this, I started to see Tony differently, and we grew closer. Eventually, we got married, and our first year together was truly happy. We lived in a spacious and affordable apartment that I found. Interestingly, my health issues almost disappeared, and I didn't have to go to the hospital while I was with Tony. Maybe being with him helped improve my health. Tony was considerate, and I felt confident that marrying him was the right decision. However, after a year, I started noticing changes in Tony's attitude towards me despite my weak health. ChatGPT, I managed to do basic housework and I always cooked meals. Tony used to praise my cooking, which made me happy. But gradually, he stopped complimenting and even started complaining about the food. He'd say things like, "Is the soup a bit bland today?" Or, "I'm not really in the mood for meat today." I'm not great at cooking, so making the same tasty meal every day is tough. But until then, he never complained. Also, I can't guess what Tony wants to eat unless he tells me. I was shocked when he said he wasn't in the mood for something. Still, I loved Tony and wanted to meet his expectations. However, his attitude towards me got worse. When he came home from work, he used to cheerfully greet me with, "I'm home. Worked hard today." But he stopped doing that and instead said, "I'm tired. I want to do something fun," showing no interest. Our habit of going out on days off also disappeared. When I suggested going somewhere, he'd coldly reply, "I'm too tired to go anywhere. If you want to go, go by yourself." His behavior seemed odd, and I started feeling my health deteriorating again. It's like my body reflected my growing anxiety. Then Tony started coming home late from work and going out with friends on his days off, saying he wanted to rest. "I'll be back soon," disregarding me entirely. This behavior went beyond just being odd. It started to breed distrust in me. At the same time, my physical condition began to resemble the times I had health issues in the past. If this continued, I would end up hospitalized again, and I wanted to avoid that. Hospital stays usually last about 2 weeks, something I'd rather avoid, so I wanted to talk to Tony about our situation. One day, when he returned from an errand, I asked him honestly, "Hey, you've been acting strange, haven't you? You're cold towards me. Have you started to dislike me? If you have something to say, say it. Otherwise, I'll go crazy." But he, perhaps drunk, bluntly spoke his true feelings to me, saying, "I'm not doing anything with you. I haven't started to hate you, but I don't love you anymore. Are you misunderstanding something?" I dated you and even married you, you know. Besides, your income is low. I'm just stressed because there's nothing fun to do." He spoke in a detached manner. His clear and blunt words left me speechless and caused deep emotional hurt. The anger and sadness that followed were overwhelming. It was as if he didn't care about me anymore. Essentially, he had reluctantly dated and married me. This reminded me of when we first met at the mixer. I realized he had his sights on another woman. When she showed interest in another man, he turned to me, the leftover one. I thought his eagerness to marry was genuine, and I was his only viable option at that time. My fears about him being frivolous and not serious about someone like me were confirmed. As these thoughts raced through my mind, my health worsened. There was one thing I wanted to correct in Tony's words, but I no longer felt the need or desire to say it. Not wanting Tony's care, I called my workplace to inform them of my impending episode and took a taxi to the hospital. After a 2-week stay, I returned home still uncertain about how to proceed with Tony. But upon my return, he said something completely unexpected. "Oh, you're back. Did you get some rest?" I was surprised. "I knew you were weak, but I didn't expect you to be hospitalized." His way of speaking showed no concern for me at all. Thinking back, he never visited me once while I was in the hospital. True, I hadn't mentioned frequent hospitalizations when we were dating, and this was my first hospitalization since we had been together. Maybe that's why he reacted this way. But his shocking statements were yet to come. "But taking it easy in the hospital, that's a nice life, huh? Earning so little and still taking time off. Naturally, your income will decrease. I don't want to continue this boring life anymore. I'm done. A wife who doesn't work is worthless. Let's get a divorce." Tony said this without any remorse. I was dumbstruck by his sudden declaration. Then he added, "Actually, I decided something while you were in the hospital. I decided to marry this woman." He showed me a photo on his smartphone of a very beautiful woman, his new girlfriend. It confirmed what I always knew. He likes beautiful women. "This woman is my childhood friend. I was surprised at how beautiful she's become when we met by chance recently." He grinned as he explained this to me. "Moreover, regarding our separation," he said, "the reason for the divorce is your fault. I'm the victim because I have a wife who doesn't work. So you should pay me compensation of $800 a month. It's your punishment for using me for so long." He expected me to pay despite thinking my income was low and him, the victim. How twisted could his thinking be? I was shocked to face such a situation soon after returning from the hospital, but I quickly regained my composure and honestly thought, this means I can separate from him right away. Deep down, I had already reached this conclusion. It's best to part ways with him. But divorcing so soon after getting married. Surprisingly, I was conscious of what others would think. However, his current behavior was a wake-up call. I decided to accept his demands, so I took out the divorce papers I had prepared earlier, signed my name, and handed them to him. "All right, if you have a new fiancé, I understand. Here are the divorce papers. Sign them quickly," I said. He looked surprised for once and said, "Oh, that was quick. Sometimes you do think. Now we can get divorced." He signed the papers, reading and handed them back to me, saying, "Don't forget about the compensation. Start transferring it by the end of this month." Then he went back to his room. He must have been surprised. He didn't expect me to comply so easily. But I had been contemplating divorce anyway. It was just a matter of time. However, I hadn't accepted everything he said. Compensation, that's another story which he'll realize later. A week or so after moving out of the house I shared with Tony, my health was stable, and I was going about my daily life. After work one day, I checked my phone and saw over 200 missed calls from an unknown number. What? Over 200 missed calls? When I opened the history, Tony's name was listed repeatedly. Seeing this, I couldn't help but feel relieved because I knew why he had been calling. When I called him back, his panic was obvious. "Hey, I got a demand for $50,000 in compensation. That's too much, don't you think?" But how could he not understand without an explanation? "Well, you were cheating on me with your fiancé. While we were still married, right?" Was her name Hillary Johnson? "She's really beautiful, isn't she?" He was flustered when I mentioned her name. "What are you talking about? More importantly, how do you know her name?" The answer was simple. Why do I know? Because I hired a detective. Your actions were obviously suspicious, so I decided to ask for a little help. They contacted me right away, saying it was a definite case. They even showed me proof photos. "According to the latest information, you had her stay over at our house just 3 days ago." Right, by the way, I filed for divorce the day before yesterday, so we were still married 3 days ago. Telling him this, he looked like he was about to explode. He had demanded compensation from me, but this was why I refused to accept that part. Detectives are amazing, but they sure cost a lot of money. When I mentioned that, he nervously asked, "That's true, but you don't have that kind of money, do you?" But that was just his misconception. Indeed, my salary as an office worker wasn't significant, but now I'm ready to reveal the truth. I wanted to counter when he called me low income, but I do have about $400,000 in rental income. The reason being, my father is the president of the real estate company. I work for the company passed down from my great-grandfather, which owns roughly 100 buildings and apartments. My father put several of those properties in my name, perhaps his way of showing love. So, the rent from those properties goes into my account. However, he always told me to do my best in my office job. Tony always assumed I was just a weak, low-income office worker but was quite shocked to learn the truth. Seriously, you should have said that earlier. He realized he had let go of a big fish. If he had treasured me, he could have had a lot of fun, but his misfortune didn't end there. So, the apartment you're living in now is actually mine. I just picked it because it was vacant. That's why there was no rent, but if you continue living there, the rent is $2,000 a month. Looks like your entire monthly salary is going to be gone. He always claimed I was low income, but his salary wasn't great either. That's why I chose one of my properties for him. Now it might be too late to tell him. And then another tragedy struck him. The beautiful fiancée, Hillary, apparently got to know the truth. It seems she was being claimed for compensation as his affair partner, and naturally, the engagement was called off, and she disappeared from Tony's life. Tony, having spent his meager salary and even borrowed money to impress Hillary, ended up with nothing in the end. It's a result of his arrogance and lack of effort, thinking he could land a big catch without trying. As a result, Tony lost his wife, his home, and his new fiancé in an instant. All that remained was his considerable debt. Finally, he said to me, "Hey, let's give it another try. You're the one for me, after all." Such a desperate statement. But without it, he would have an even more boring life than before. However, as far as I'm concerned, he no longer means anything to me. But you would say you were just with me because you had no choice, right? Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. I replied casually and decided to end the call. His calls continued, but they were so annoying that I blocked his number. Since then, he has been evicted from the apartment and lives in a shabby place, struggling with debt. He works from morning till night, but another hardship hit him. Hillary's acquaintances, tough-looking guys, found out where he lived and started threatening him. "You're going to pay the compensation she's being charged with too." While their methods are forceful, what they say isn't unreasonable. After all, Hillary was deceived. Thus, Tony's debt only grew. Now he's so dispirited that no one wants anything to do with him. As for me, I'm in good health, free from major stress. The episodes have stopped, and overcoming this huge obstacle has perhaps made me mentally stronger. My office work no longer suffers, and my parents are happy. Now I focus on not stressing myself and being honest with my feelings. When asked about my next relationship, I think I'll stay away from it for a while. Work has become enjoyable, and I find it fulfilling. Before thinking about romance, I plan to travel, something I couldn't do before due to my health concerns.
Hi, I'm a lady who works as a cook. I recently got married, and I'm really enjoying being a newlywed. I usually keep my past to myself and don't talk much about it. I don't have many friends, but I tell people I grew up like any other kid, even though it wasn't that simple. I had a tough childhood, but I was lucky to have my grandpa who loved me a lot. He was like my only family because I didn't have parents around. My grandpa worked hard, sometimes at construction sites or collecting and selling things like paper or fruits and veggies. I don't have baby photos because we couldn't afford them, but when I turned 6, my grandpa made sure I had a picture taken every year on my birthday to capture my growth. I didn't go to kindergarten, but my grandpa taught me basics like the alphabet and numbers. My grandpa didn't have much money, but he was well respected in our neighborhood. The neighbors would pitch in to help take care of me because they knew my grandpa was working hard to raise me. This meant I got to have warm meals and play with the older kids in the neighborhood, who taught me a lot of things. When my grandpa finished work, he'd come get me. Our house was small and old, with just one bedroom, a kitchen, and a bathroom. It could get pretty uncomfortable in the extremes of weather, but we managed okay. In the summer, my grandpa fixed up an old fan he found, and in the winter, he washed and reused old blankets to keep me warm. He did everything he could to take care of me, even though we didn't have much. Our neighbors were also struggling, but they still helped us a lot. They came to school with me on my first day, took turns attending parent-teacher meetings at my grandpa's request, and even packed food for my school trips as a way to say thank you for his hard work. My grandpa was a handyman who could fix just about anything around the house. In our friendly neighborhood, people helped each other out with their skills, but gossip still circulated. Some folks couldn't help but wonder why my grandpa was raising me alone in such tough circumstances. He never really talked about my parents when I was growing up. Whenever I asked, he'd just say they had passed away soon after I was born and were now in heaven. When I was younger, I thought they had died from some serious illness like cancer. But as I got older, I started hearing different stories, mainly from the women in the neighborhood. They'd whisper about how my grandpa had never been married and how nobody had ever seen my mom or dad. It was confusing because my grandpa had always told me they were my real parents. And if I had parents, shouldn't I have had a grandma too? It didn't add up. As I listened to her, I realized something strange. We didn't have any family photos of my parents, not even one of my grandma. Our photo album only contained pictures that my grandpa insisted we take every year, along with some snapshots our neighbors had taken of us. When I reached middle school and started going through puberty, I began to rebel a bit, questioning my identity more and more. Living only with my grandpa made it even harder. I had so many questions about my parents, and by ninth grade, I couldn't hold them in any longer. I sat my grandpa down and bombarded him with questions, desperate for answers about where my mom and dad were, whether they were alive or dead, and why there were no photos of them or my grandma. I felt like I was interrogating him like a criminal, but I needed to know. As I got emotional and started crying, my grandpa just held me close and reassured me. He explained that my parents couldn't raise me, so they left me with him when I was a baby, hoping to come back for me someday. He showed me a small bracelet they had left behind, saying it was with me when I was born in the hospital. Seeing that bracelet, some of my curiosity eased. Even though I learned that my parents had abandoned me, knowing that my grandpa loved me and raised me with care was enough. From that day on, I started to find some peace within myself. I began to see a way out of the challenges of puberty. College wasn't an option for me due to our financial situation, and I didn't want to add to my grandpa's burdens, so I made up my mind about my career before even starting high school. "Grandpa," I said, "I want to be a cook." I planned to take career classes during my senior year, earn my cooking license, and find a job right after graduation. My grandpa asked if I was sure I didn't want to go to college, offering to do whatever it took to save up for tuition. I reassured him that cooking was my passion and that I wanted to set things up so he wouldn't feel guilty about it. True to my word, once I reached my senior year of high school, I dove into cooking classes and earned several licenses. I secured a job a month before graduation and received my first paycheck just a week after. With it, I bought some steak to celebrate, though I couldn't afford to dine out. Back home, I surprised my grandpa with the steak and handed him an envelope containing some of my earnings. "This is for you, Grandpa," I said. "It's what's left after buying the steaks." My grandpa was speechless. "Patty," he finally said, "I can't accept this. You worked hard for this money. You should use it for yourself. I can't possibly take it." He insisted, pushing the envelope back toward me. "Grandpa, if you don't take it, I'll leave home. Why should you be the only one doing things for me? I really wanted to give you this money," I threatened, feeling a surge of frustration. Eventually, my grandpa relented, tears welling up as he accepted the envelope. He tucked it into a book he enjoyed reading. Sharing that steak meal in the place I'd always called home felt incredibly special. For the first time in my life, I felt proud to do something for my grandpa. We chatted happily as we ate, until a knock interrupted us. Who could be knocking at this hour? My grandpa wondered aloud as I went to answer the door. To our surprise, two police officers stood there. Is Richard O'Leary here? They asked, and I confirmed that he was my grandpa. And you must be Patty Rowland, they inquired. And I affirmed that too. Both of you need to come with us to the police station, they stated matter-of-factly. When I asked why, they informed us, Mr. O'Leary is being accused of kidnapping a child. You both need to come with us. I was stunned. Kidnapping. I couldn't fathom why my grandpa was being accused of such a heinous crime. I protested that he wasn't that kind of person, but the police insisted we accompany them. That night, my grandpa and I found ourselves in a police car headed to the station. Despite the gravity of the situation, my grandpa remained oddly calm. We waited in a designated area until eventually, the police returned with some other individuals accompanying them. A woman in her 50s entered the room, accompanied by a couple holding hands. She approached us, pointing accusingly at my grandpa. That's him. He's the one who kidnapped the president's daughter. She exclaimed loudly, shocked and confused. I demanded answers. What do you mean? Who did my grandpa supposedly kidnap? I shouted back at her. The police intervened, trying to calm both the woman and me down. Behind the shouting woman, the couple stepped forward, and the woman addressed me with tears in her eyes. Are you Patty? She asked, and I awkwardly nodded in response. Suddenly, she embraced me and burst into tears. Patty, it's Mom. I'm your mother. Her words hit me like a bolt from the blue. I was stunned and bewildered, but my grandpa's composed demeanor added to my confusion. He stood up calmly and addressed her. So, you've finally returned. Only now. Are you okay? The woman in her 50s scoffed, accusing my grandpa of kidnapping. I vehemently protested his innocence, while the couple watched on, clearly perplexed. The woman in her 50s went on to explain that a couple had visited her orphanage, claiming they had left their baby there and had now returned to reclaim their child. They left behind a letter stating their intention to return for the child, along with hospital paperwork. I was about 3 or 4 at the time. However, despite searching through records and adoption papers, we found nothing about the child. Then, a distant memory surfaced. There was a child who went missing years ago, causing a major commotion. Despite reporting to the police and filing missing child reports, she was never found. I recalled an old man who used to work at the orphanage abruptly quitting around that time. He had been overly attentive to the children, and I had considered firing him before he vanished. Could he have been involved in kidnapping a child from the orphanage, leaving behind a distraught woman? We underwent DNA testing as my grandpa calmly observed the couple. He asked the police, are they truly Patty's parents? The police insisted we wait for the results. Then, my grandpa pleaded with the officers, offering to stay in jail if necessary, but asking for the chance to tell his side of the story. Grasping the officer's hands, he began to speak. The police acknowledged his right to defend himself. Grandpa agreed to share his story once the DNA confirmed the couple's parentage. Reluctantly, the police consulted the couple, who agreed to the arrangement if it meant hearing the truth. While awaiting the DNA results, my grandpa remained at home under recognizance, and I continued my routine, going to and from work. 2 days later, the DNA results came in, showing a 99.99% match. After 20 years, I finally met my parents. Hearing the news, I was overcome with a strange mix of emotions. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably, but my parents embraced me, soothing my sobs. The orphanage director glared at my grandpa with fury, as if she could kill him on the spot. Now you must arrest this old man for kidnapping. Were you planning to ruin my establishment? She raged, her anger palpable. True to his word, my grandpa began his tale, producing a stack of papers from home and presenting them to the police one by one. It's true that I worked as a janitor at the orphanage, not far from where I live now, he began. One morning, I arrived early to find a young child sleeping outside the orphanage, curled up in a ball. I assumed she had been abandoned by her parents. Concerned for her well-being, I tried to bring her inside, but she woke up and, with her black eyes, called me Grandpa. Grandpa continued, explaining how the child handed him a bag containing a doll, paperwork, and a letter promising to return for their daughter. I took her into the orphanage where she began to live, he recounted. While cleaning, I often saw the child, but she always seemed to have a dark expression. It wasn't until about a month later that I discovered the reason. The woman was abusing her, especially when the orphanage faced financial strain due to overcrowding. Another child had arrived, and she took out her frustration on this poor girl. Grandpa described how the child was forced to do arduous chores, her hands red and bleeding from the harsh treatment. I confronted the director multiple times, urging her to stop mistreating the child. He continued, but instead of listening, she fired me. As I was leaving, I couldn't bear to see the child so unhappy. That's why I did what I did, my grandpa explained, his voice tinged with remorse. He recounted how he had taken me in after witnessing the neglect and abuse I suffered under the orphanage director's care. The director didn't even bother to read the documents in the bag. He continued, neglecting her duties and subjecting me to abuse. That's why I took Patty in, to protect her and raise her as my own granddaughter. After his revelation, the police and I were left in a state of uncertainty. The orphanage director, however, remained defiant, accusing my grandpa of fabricating stories to tarnish her reputation. "I'll sue you for slander," she threatened, her voice dripping with venom. The police pressed my grandpa for evidence to support his claims. With confidence, he mentioned a former employee, Mrs. Cumberland, who could attest to the abuse. While we awaited Mrs. Cumberland's testimony, I was speechless, grappling with the truth unfolding before me. In the late afternoon, Mrs. Cumberland arrived at the police station, armed with photographs she had taken of my injured hands and other signs of abuse. My parents, upon seeing the evidence, were overcome with emotion. The undeniable proof left the orphanage director cornered, and my parents wasted no time in announcing their intention to sue her for her crimes. Despite her pleas for forgiveness, she was arrested and charged with child abuse. That night, my grandpa and I returned home, the weight of the day's revelations heavy on our minds. From my parents, I learned the heartbreaking truth. They had left me at the orphanage due to financial hardship, hoping to reclaim me once they were stable. When they finally returned, they discovered I was missing and unregistered. Only recently did they learn of the possibility that my grandpa had taken me in. Although their actions couldn't be excused, my parents found solace in the fact that they had finally found me after years of searching. They faced repercussions for abandoning me, but now they sought to alleviate their guilt. I harbored no resentment toward my parents. I was simply eager and anxious to finally meet them. Nor did I hold any blame toward my grandpa, who had saved me and showered me with love and care during my time with him. His unwavering support was the reason I couldn't hate my parents. I assured them that I understood their circumstances and expressed gratitude for their efforts to find me. As my mom hugged me, tears streaming down her face, she knelt before my grandpa. Without him, I wouldn't have had such a wonderful upbringing, she acknowledged. Despite his protests, my parents insisted on taking care of him and urged us to live together as one family. Eventually, we moved in with my parents, but the adjustment wasn't easy, as we had spent more time apart than together. Eventually, my parents arranged for a separate house for my grandpa and me next to theirs, allowing us to live comfortably while still being close to family. After work, we would gather for dinner and watch TV together, just like any other family. After I got married, my parents invited my grandpa to live with us, and we seamlessly merged into one big family. Meanwhile, my parents pursued legal action against the orphanage director, adamant that they couldn't forgive her. During the proceedings, I met my husband, who was working as a prosecutor on the case. He admired my grandpa's selflessness in raising a child who wasn't his own for nearly 2 decades. It made me reflect on whether I could have done the same in his shoes. I hold my grandpa in the highest regard and wish him a long and healthy life. Thank you all for listening to my story. Your support and comments mean a lot to me. Wishing you all a day filled with happiness and good fortune.
Starting today, we're moving in with my parents. It's not a big deal because they're my own parents, right? But my husband surprised me with this idea out of nowhere. I was so shocked and close to tears, I couldn't believe what he was saying. Just a few days after my father's funeral, my husband decided we should move out of our home. It was a shock because my emotions were still raw from saying goodbye to Dad. He didn't seem to understand my grief and chose our new place without asking how I felt. Surprisingly, it was a villa my father had left me. When we got there, my in-laws had already moved in. I'm Victoria, 29 years old, a product designer with my own successful business. Matthew and I have been married for 5 years. My career is going great, and I'm financially stable enough to own our apartment. Throughout our relationship, my husband felt insecure because I earned more than him. Instead of being happy for me, he saw it as a competition, acting immaturely and choosing rivalry over support. I had hoped for his understanding during this tough time, but instead, our new home felt like a battleground of emotions. My father used to tell me not to worry about him and to focus on my marriage, but I believed it was important to spend time with him while we could. As time went on, I found it hard to hide my frustration with my husband. In the beginning, our love was strong, and we were happy together. But his insensitive remarks about my father's illness changed everything. It was difficult to accept this new side of him. My husband and I both worked from home, but he thought having me around was distracting, so I rented an office space and started commuting. It was convenient because it was on my way to the hospital where my father was being treated. Meanwhile, my husband stayed home all day and left all the chores to me. Juggling work, taking care of my father, and managing the house wore me out. Every day, I came home to find a mess and dirty dishes left by my husband. He seemed oblivious to my exhaustion and lived selfishly. Living with him made me realize he lacked empathy, leaving me feeling terribly alone. Then my father passed away. We had sold our family home as we had discussed with him. Despite being busy with funeral arrangements, my husband seemed distant, often on his phone or disappearing altogether. "Matthew, please help me, especially now," I begged, but he just got another work call. After hanging up, he laughed about all the calls he was getting. My anger and disappointment towards him grew deeper, especially with the sudden loss of my father. He became even colder, and I felt overwhelmingly sad. On the day of the funeral, he spent a long time talking to his parents away from everyone else. When they returned, they were smirking, which made me feel more isolated as others noticed their behavior. Despite everything, the cremation, burial, and inheritance processes went smoothly and the funeral ended well. After my father's death, my husband casually suggested, "Let's move in with my parents starting today. They're my parents, so it should be fine, right? If you don't agree, maybe we should think about divorce," he said with a laugh. But I couldn't stay calm after such an unreasonable proposal, especially while grieving. "How can we live there? We don't have any extra rooms in this apartment, do we?" I questioned. Actually, one room in our apartment served as an office and storage for my husband's work stuff. Since we didn't have kids, he used it freely. "We have that villa you inherited," he replied, smiling. I was shocked. Even though we had sold our family home, the villa held special memories for both my father and me. It was a place I wanted to keep as a tribute to him. But my husband didn't seem to care about my feelings and kept pushing for his own way. Living in that villa would be really tough for me. I tried to explain, but he didn't seem to listen. His parents had already ended their lease and decided to move into the villa. It seemed they had planned this during my father's funeral. Attracted by its space and peaceful location, their move was already in progress, and I felt like any objections I had would be pointless. Every time I tried to talk about my feelings, my husband would get annoyed. "You're always thinking about yourself. You've been away from home so much because of your father's illness and those sudden emergencies. Do you realize how much I've had to put up with because of your obsession with your father?" His words were harsh and unsympathetic, making my world even darker. "Now that your father has passed, you should listen to me," he went on. "It took him a whole year to die, which was way too long." His cold, heartless comments left me reeling. I didn't want to believe that this was who my husband truly was, but it was becoming painfully clear. He had little regard for my father or me. I remembered the pain on my father's face as he lay in the hospital bed. He would never have wanted me to abandon his memory just to obey my husband's insensitive demands. My husband's lack of empathy was crushing, and I felt more and more alone in my grief. and in my battle to honor my father's legacy. In that moment, any love I had for my husband vanished. My heart ached as I considered his apparent excitement about gaining the villa while I was supposed to be grieving for my father. Despite the storm of emotions inside me, I kept my composure and cautioned him, "You may think living in the villa is a good idea now, but you might regret it later." He seemed determined, so reluctantly, I agreed to his plan. Taking only a few essentials, I left our home. My husband looked puzzled by my sparse belongings, but I simply told him, "I'll get the rest later." Honestly, I had no desire to say another word to him. It hurt to face my in-laws, who seemed to have eagerly awaited my father's death and were now moving into the villa with enthusiasm. I followed my husband in silence. The one thing I couldn't bear was the thought of my beloved place being subject to his whims. The villa, a single-family home near the sea, sat in an average neighborhood but was still conveniently close to the city center. Its land held great value. Stepping out of the station, memories of my childhood flooded back. My mother was alive then, and I remembered my father carrying me home on his back after I fell asleep on the train. Arriving at the villa, I found my in-laws already inside. Suspicion crept in. It seemed my husband had secretly given them a key without telling me. This realization made me even more uneasy. The fact that my in-laws had planned their move without consulting anyone only added to my distrust. As I looked around, as I watched my in-laws, I could see the excitement in their eyes as they imagined their new life in our family home, the villa. It was filled with sturdy furniture carefully chosen by my father, with eclectic European-style furnishings likely picked out by my mother, each piece holding sentimental value. Yet, they seemed oblivious to the true beauty of the villa. "Isn't it perfect? Goodbye cramped apartment living. We're blessed to call this place home now," they exclaimed. The view from the second floor was truly breathtaking. It reminded me of my father's quiet pride in this special place, a stark contrast to my in-laws' insensitive excitement. Amid their excitement over what they dubbed the marvelous House of Secrets, my husband and his parents' enthusiastic comments only grated on my nerves. It seemed they were completely ignoring the emotional weight of my father's passing, treating the villa as nothing more than a fortunate inheritance. The location and the house are both flawless. "We're lucky your father left us this magnificent villa. We owe him our thanks," my husband remarked thoughtlessly, sharing laughs with his parents as they cracked open beers to celebrate their new living situation. As I prepared snacks for them, cherished memories of moments spent with my parents around the dining table felt overshadowed and tainted by the current atmosphere. I chose to bury my emotions and soldier through the night. The next morning, the mood was abruptly shattered by my mother-in-law's piercing scream echoing through the villa. As I hurried to see what had happened, I found her on the bathroom floor, gripping her foot with a panicked expression. "The floor just gave way under me," she gasped, still shaken from the shock. My husband and father-in-law looked puzzled. "The floor seems fine. You probably just slipped," they suggested casually, brushing off her concerns. They examined the area she pointed to, but the floorboards appeared smooth and perfectly aligned. However, she insisted, "I'm certain the floor collapsed." As they continued their cursory inspection, I intervened. "Have you tried stepping on that slightly different colored part of the floor?" I asked, surprised. They all focused on the spot I indicated. Stepping forward, I pressed down on the discolored section with my slippered foot, and immediately the floorboard made a distinct sound and slightly sank. But the moment I lifted my foot, it snapped back into place. "What was that?" they exclaimed simultaneously. If someone stepped on it without knowing, they'd think the floor had collapsed. "Look, the floor sinks a bit. It's like a trap," I clarified. "That's dangerous. Is there something wrong with this house?" They reacted, suddenly concerned. Their previous disregard for the sentimental value of the villa to me seemed momentarily forgotten as they faced the unexpected reality of its physical quirks. I calmly explained the situation, and they all looked at me with surprise and skepticism. "It's not a flaw," I assured them. "My father deliberately installed these features. This house is what you might call a mechanical mansion or a trick house." "Why would he do that?" they asked, perplexed. "Well, my father was a huge fan of ninjas. He invested a lot of time and money in this villa, which was not only his pride and joy, but also a showcase of his creativity," I explained. "As a child, I often came here while he worked on the house's mechanisms or added new ones. That's why the villa is full of traps and clever contraptions, like a shelf you shouldn't touch, a floorboard that drops when stepped on, a door that only opens in a specific sequence, hidden doors, and even secret rooms. This house is a reflection of my father's dreams and his inventive spirit developed over many years. Of course, this place is familiar to me, having visited since childhood and learned from my father how to navigate all these traps. I have no trouble with them. But it's a different story for my husband and in-laws who are unfamiliar with it. I warned you that living in this villa would be challenging. I also mentioned it's a place filled with my father's memories. My father's fascination with ninja gadgets was widely known among our relatives. What surprised me was that my husband and his parents had been oblivious to it. At first, my husband claimed he hadn't heard about it, but now he was speechless. My in-laws were equally taken aback by this revelation. With our apartment lease already canceled and nowhere else to go, they looked to my husband for guidance. Amid their confusion, both my father-in-law and husband accidentally triggered another trap, causing them to tumble. Seeing them sprawled on the ground, I couldn't help but chuckle. "Feel free to stay as long as you like," I said, my tone more sarcastic than sincere. They had been enchanted by the villa's luxury, ignoring my warnings and showing no interest in my father's hobbies. Now their oversight was catching up with them. Even my explanations about the trap dangers seemed to go unheard. "This won't be a problem. We'll adjust," my husband replied, trying to sound confident. I smiled knowingly, understanding his attempt but also aware of the challenges they would face in a house filled with my father's intricate contraptions. I informed them that I would return to the apartment to prepare for our move. However, my real intention was to stay behind. I needed some time alone to go through my father's belongings, finding comfort in the quiet. It gave me the space to gradually regain a sense of optimism and start envisioning my future. In just 2 days, my husband and in-laws had had enough of life in the villa. Meanwhile, my father's villa had become a minor attraction in the neighborhood. It was regularly featured in local newsletters as the trick mansion nestled in the residential area. Whenever the villa was occupied, curious locals and visitors, drawn by its reputation, would come to see the famous house. I remembered times when strangers toured the villa and local children played around it, bringing energy and liveliness to the place. My father had listed both the villa's and our former home's phone numbers in the newsletters. But now that the family home's number was inactive, any inquiries would be redirected to the villa's number. Thanks to my upbringing, I was fluent in foreign languages, which made it easy for me to handle calls from international visitors. However, my husband and in-laws struggled with this. They couldn't understand foreign languages and were already overwhelmed by the challenging lifestyle of navigating the house's many traps. Exhausted, sleep-deprived, and overwhelmed by the constant stream of unexpected visitors and challenging phone calls, they stumbled back to the apartment. "Why don't we all just live in this apartment together? Consider it," they suggested, desperate to escape the villa. They had eagerly anticipated inheriting the villa after my father's passing. But ironically, they couldn't handle living there for even 2 days. Instead of offering them tea, I handed my husband the divorce papers already filled out and stamped. "There's no way we can live together. If you understand, please leave quickly," I explained with a heavy sigh. I couldn't forgive him for his insensitivity and the way he had dismissed my feelings without discussion or explanation. He had unilaterally decided we would live with his parents. He had never shared household responsibilities with me before and had comfortably left them all to me. During our time at the villa, I felt trapped and overwhelmed, yet he seemed completely indifferent to my struggles. Facing my husband and his parents in our apartment, I realized I couldn't continue living with someone so self-centered. His actions had spoken louder than any promises he could make. "What's going on? You used to love me, right?" he asked, puzzled by my cold demeanor. I couldn't help but scoff at his naive question. How can I love someone who secretly wished for my father's death and celebrated when he passed? I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. I handed him the divorce papers and firmly instructed all 3 of them to leave the apartment. "First of all, this is my apartment. If anyone should leave, it's you," I asserted. When my husband raised his voice, disregarding the disturbance it caused our neighbors, I reminded him calmly, "Victoria, I'll call the police for trespassing if you don't leave quietly. Remember, this apartment is in my name." They fell silent, realizing the seriousness of the situation. They had relied on me for financial support, and now, with little of their own, they faced a harsh reality. Determined to cut ties before they could start their lengthy persuasions, I watched them leave. Neither my husband nor my in-laws had much in savings. After being kicked out of the apartment and unable to return to the villa, They ended up in a cheap, low-quality apartment, struggling to get by. The old apartment was so much better, they often complained. Initially, my husband felt guilty and apologized repeatedly. However, as time passed, his guilt turned into resentment towards his parents. Because of their age, they didn't work much, and their attempts were short-lived. Eventually, they used up all their savings and pension. The constant arguments drove a wedge between them as a family. The thin walls of their new apartment barely contained their daily disagreements. Even when they received noise complaints, they refused to apologize. Instead, they responded with hostility, making themselves unpopular with the neighbors. It seemed inevitable, but they would have to find another place to live soon. My husband, who had once enjoyed the convenience of working from home, now found himself in a cramped space with no proper workspace. This severely impacted his ability to focus, and as a result, his reputation and sales suffered. He struggled to make ends meet with a late-night job at a convenience store and was considering taking on multiple part-time jobs just to get by. In moments of clarity, my in-laws realized that letting their son make decisions for them had been their biggest mistake. During their frequent arguments, they blamed the villa's traps and each other. "If you had been more responsible, we wouldn't be in this mess," they would argue, pointing fingers but never acknowledging their own roles in their downfall. After the divorce, my career as a product designer took a significant leap forward. To cope with the grief of my father's passing and the chaos that ensued, I poured my creativity into designing with a unique twist, incorporating ninja-inspired elements inspired by my father's interests. I shared these designs on social media, where they quickly gained popularity. To my surprise, a major cosmetics company reached out, intrigued by my designs. They wanted me to create packaging with an Asian flair, incorporating ninja themes. Embracing the project, I saw it as a way to honor my father's memory. It turned out to be a huge success, propelling my career to new heights. I found solace in sharing updates at my parents' graves, telling them about my achievements and how their legacy continued to inspire my work. I decided to keep the villa, transforming it into a unique mechanical house filled with memories of my father. I organized tours and made slight adjustments to ensure it was safe for visitors, allowing locals and tourists to explore and enjoy it for free. Before long, the house garnered significant media attention. The income from this exposure was invaluable, helping to cover its maintenance costs. Moreover, articles about the house were translated into different languages, garnering support from international fans, including elderly enthusiasts who shared my father's passion for ninjas. I devoted myself to maintaining this enchanting place. The mechanical house buzzed with activity, especially popular among local children. "Is this the famous mechanical house? Where are the tricks? Show us," they'd eagerly inquire. With the help of local volunteers, we ensured everyone could play safely. Foreign tourists, in particular, were captivated by features like the hidden floorboard and secret doors. While losing my father and the upheaval of inheriting the villa led to my divorce, the gains have outweighed the losses. The villa has evolved into a treasure trove of memories that I now share with loved ones and visitors alike. It has also sparked a personal transformation, propelling me forward with renewed optimism and hope. My name is Emily, and I'm 32 years old, a stay-at-home mom. My husband Benjamin, 34, works a regular office job. We have a beautiful little girl named Mia, and after 8 years of marriage, our 6-year-old daughter has both of us wrapped around her finger. I also have an older sister, Lily, who just turned 35. She recently got divorced due to personality clashes and is now a single mom to her son Logan, who is 4 years old. One day, we had planned a trip to the zoo with just the 4 of us. Unfortunately, I caught a cold and had to stay in bed. Benjamin decided to take the day off from work and still take Mia and Logan to the zoo. It ended up being just him and Lily alone, despite them being in-laws. Little did I know, that day would mark a change. Fast forward to another day. I was walking down the shopping street on my way home from the grocery store when I glimpsed Benjamin and Lily in a cafe by chance. I was puzzled but had to pick up Mia from after-school care soon, so I headed home without dwelling on it. That night, when Benjamin got home, he casually mentioned they ran into each other and sought shelter from the rain in the cafe. I believed him. However, from then on, he started coming home late more often, asking for more pocket money, and going out on his days off. When Lily visited, their relationship seemed more intimate than before, leaving me with a string of suspicions. Despite this, I trusted him. Benjamin still adored Mia, and we seemed to have a good relationship. Little did I know, I was the only one who thought everything was fine. Then, an incident occurred that shattered my illusion. One day, as usual, Lily came over to our house. A friend invited me on a trip. Would you mind taking care of Logan for about a week? It's in the Bahamas, she asked persistently. Initially hesitant, I understood Lily had it tough since her divorce. Despite my reservations, I reluctantly agreed. As Lily's departure approached, Benjamin announced he would be out of town for a few days on a business trip. Surprisingly, it was the same day as Lily's trip to the Bahamas. Was this merely a coincidence? Was it my imagination that Benjamin seemed secretive and overly attached to his phone? Was it my sister's tough times clouding my judgment? The morning of Lily's trip, she arrived with Logan. I noticed immediately that something was wrong. Logan's hand was hot, his body feverish. Lily confirmed he'd had a fever since yesterday. We can't delay. We need to get him to a hospital quickly, I insisted. But then Lily dropped a bombshell. I'll leave Logan to you. Shocked, I protested. You can't possibly leave a sick child behind. I have no choice. We've planned this trip for a while. Please take good care of him, she said, brushing off my concerns. Despite my pleas, she left, leaving me to care for Logan, whose health took precedence over everything else. I couldn't believe it. Logan was suffering with a high fever, and yet his condition worsened from the stress of moving around. I quickly tucked him into bed and placed a cold, damp towel on his forehead. While preparing an ice pillow in the freezer, my husband woke up. Honey, it seems like Logan has a fever, he remarked. Really? My sister's awful. She left Logan like this to go on a trip, I replied, frustration evident in my voice. It can't be helped. They've had this trip planned for a long time, and it's too late to cancel now. You too, dear. Poor Logan. If you're so concerned, then you should take care of him. Honey, can you do something about your business trip? If Logan has a contagious disease, he might pass it on to Mia. I'll take care of Logan, and I need you to take care of Mia, I suggested, hoping my husband would prioritize our daughter over his work. But my hope was dashed. What? That's impossible. If you're worried, why not leave her with your parents? That won't work. Our parents are busy with their jobs, and your parents live too far away to drop her off at this hour. Then it can't be helped. Logan will be fine if we let him rest. Don't worry, he said dismissively. Please don't be so casual about this. What do you want me to do? I can't change my plans. Oh, it's time. I have to go now. Bye. With that, he hurriedly left. Left alone, I immediately called my parents. They couldn't take time off from their sudden work commitments, but they agreed to leave work early and pick up Mia as soon as possible. I felt relieved when my mom assured me they were on their way. Until my mom arrives, I'll have to keep Maya locked in her room. I feel sorry for her, but it can't be helped, I thought to myself. Meanwhile, Logan's condition seemed to be worsening. He started coughing in addition to the fever. In the afternoon, my mom, who had left work early, arrived. I handed Mia over to her and headed straight to the pediatric clinic with Logan. In the car, the motion seemed to make Logan uncomfortable, which was hard to see. The doctor said it was just a common cold and prescribed a fever reducer. He asked us to observe Logan and call an ambulance if his fever went up or if he seemed delirious. I'm sorry, Mom, for leaving Maya with you, I apologized. Don't worry about it. More importantly, I'm concerned about Logan, my mom reassured me. After hanging up with my mom, I decided to call my husband's office. I needed to find out where he was staying on his business trip, just in case. The reply I received was, I should be on paid vacation. I sighed, lifting my voice towards the heavens as if making a plea. A dreaded suspicion was beginning to solidify. Opening my husband's laptop, I had never looked through it before, but a quick scan of his browsing history revealed his destination, the Bahamas. Both flight tickets and hotel bookings were arranged by him. I recognized the hotel's name. It was the same place my sister had mentioned. My sister and husband in the Bahamas at the same time, staying in the same hotel. Such a coincidence seemed next to impossible. The mere fact that my husband was in the Bahamas, taking paid leave while claiming to be on a business trip, was alarming. Curious, I looked at my smartphone, checking my sister's social media posts. There were no new posts, but looking at her recent ones, although not clearly visible, I could tell she was frequently with someone. The glimpses of clothing that could catch were all too familiar. What changed my suspicion into certainty was a photo where the wristwatch of the man she was with was visible, a watch I had given my husband. Though not expensive, it was from a unique manufacturer, making the odds that another man dressed like my husband, wearing the same watch, would appear in my sister's photo infinitesimally small. And then I found the conclusive piece of evidence, a photo titled "Window Shopping" with my sister's reflection on the glass. On the edge of that photo, another person's reflection was undeniably my husband. My blissfully ignorant sister must have posted the picture without noticing her husband's reflection in the glass. My hands trembling, I saved all the pictures. There was no mistake about it. My sister and husband were having an affair. Right now, they were together. I felt everything I had built up with my husband crumbling down all at once. I tried calling them numerous times, but soon a voicemail message started playing. It seemed they had turned off their phones. Logan's fever still hadn't broken. Seeing his distressed face, anger started to rise within me. Despite our young child's suffering, despite being in such a difficult situation right now, my sister and husband were probably laughing, enjoying their vacation in the Bahamas. Could there be a worse story? I was trembling with anger, wondering what to do, but that could wait. First, I needed Logan to recover. However, Logan's fever showed no signs of abating. In fact, it seemed to be increasing. I was shocked when I took his temperature. 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Children tend to run high fevers. He had experienced 40 degrees before, but never this high. Why isn't the fever reducer working? Logan was completely drained. It looked painful for him to even move. What should I do? I fought hard to suppress the panic that was threatening to overtake me. I need to call an ambulance, I decided, clutching my smartphone tightly. Mama, Logan murmured in a small voice, his face contorted in pain. He called for his aunt. Unforgivable. I will never forgive them, I thought as my vision seemed to turn red with anger. Logan's condition took a sudden turn for the worse. A week had passed since then. Contrary to my feelings of sorrow, today was a clear day. Staring blankly at the vast blue sky, tears began to spill over. I had lost count of how many times I had cried, yet the tears wouldn't stop. I could feel Maya's hands trembling in mine. My daughter was crying too. As I lifted her up, I saw my parents weeping uncontrollably over her small, trembling shoulders, along with everyone else in attendance. Suddenly, my smartphone vibrated. I put Maya down and saw my sister's name on the screen. Hello. Emily. Long time no see. I just got back from the Bahamas. I've just landed at the airport. I'm off to pick up Logan. Thanks for looking after him, my sister said cheerfully. It felt like a phone call from another world. He's gone to heaven, I muttered to myself. What? My sister on the other end of the phone didn't seem to understand what I had said. Huh? Heaven? What are you talking about? I don't understand. That's what I'm saying. He went to heaven while you were on your trip to the Bahamas. Huh? I don't understand what you're saying. You'll understand when you get here, I replied, my voice heavy with grief. The funeral is over and we're at the crematorium. Huh? Crematorium? My sister sounded confused. When I tried to explain the location of the crematorium, she abruptly hung up the phone. Logan. My sister just got out of the taxi and dramatically changed her expression as she started running. She called his name and looked around, but Logan was nowhere to be found. Where is he? He's not here. Of course he's not. What do you mean? I slowly pointed in one direction towards the crematorium. The crematorium doesn't emit smoke like it used to, but it's true. He's being cremated right now, I whispered. Logan? That day, the day you dropped off Logan, his fever shot up to 42 degrees Fahrenheit all at once. 42 degrees Fahrenheit. The antipyretic we got from the pediatrician had no effect. His condition worsened rapidly. We had to call an ambulance in a panic. So that means Logan is... I don't want to answer that. We're in the middle of a funeral, I said, spreading my arms wide, pointing at the crematorium. Hey, what does this mean? What happened to Logan? Why are you here? Someone shouted in place of my speechless sister. It was my husband. Unbelievably, he had come here with my sister. What does that matter right now? What about Logan? Of course it matters. Not losing to my husband's voice, I shouted back, how can you two just abandon your family and go on a secret love trip? Moreover, Logan had a fever, and even when I said I needed help, you ignored me and went on your trip. Are you out of your mind? Who? What are you talking about? I already know. When I asked your company, they said you had taken paid leave. I checked your computer and found a booking for a trip to the Bahamas. You were on the same flight, if not the same hotel, as my sister. You think you can just claim it's coincidence? That's... I must have had a terrifying look on my face. My husband lost his words under my intimidating stare. Tell me, Emily, did he die? Do you have the luxury to ask such a question now? What do you think we're doing here? Why do you think I'm in a simple, modest dress, standing at a crematorium? Don't you get it? No, 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 no. My sister's scream dominated the scene as she broke down crying. I looked down at her with cold eyes. You have no right to cry. You abandoned your son to go on a secret trip with my husband. You're the worst kind of person. I was lonely. I was so lonely all by myself, so I just what? Reached out to your sister's husband? What do you mean? I've done nothing wrong. It's not my fault. The real villain here is my ex-husband who refused to take our son. And it's not just him, it's also the fault of our parents who never helped me with the child. And Emily too, my sister, never taking responsibility. I didn't choose to have a child. I didn't choose to be a single mother. I wanted him to take our son if we were going to get divorced, but he refused. I've been struggling alone because of that. But I didn't. I couldn't. Logan? Logan? Lily's voice broke as she said his name. It was her lover. My husband comforted her as she collapsed into tears. It seemed they were no longer interested in hiding their affair. Don't blame everyone else for your problems. Our parents and I have helped as much as we could. You can't justify leaving a sick child to go on a tryst. Not realizing how rotten you are, you're the worst. Hey Emily, isn't that a bit harsh? Lily just lost Logan. She's in shock. Shut up, accomplice. I'm divorcing you, so be ready to pay what you owe. What? What does that have to do with anything? It has everything to do with it. My husband and I argued while my sister cried. It was a chaotic situation. Our parents approached my tear-streaked sister, started blaming them. To add, Mom, why didn't you take care of Logan properly? Why did you let Logan? Suddenly, there was a loud slap. Enough with your nonsense. It was my father who slapped my sister's face. Don't blame others when you were the one who abandoned your child. And having an affair with your sister's husband, you shameless woman. I'm ashamed to have raised you like this. My sister cried even louder at her father's words. I wanted to punch my husband too. I was glaring at him when... Mommy. I heard a little boy's voice. My sister quickly turned around. There. What? Logan? My sister ran towards them, but the man quickly moved Logan out of her reach. Hey, what are you doing, Andrew? The man holding Logan was Andrew, my sister's ex-husband. He was the one who divorced my sister, citing irreconcilable differences. What are you doing leaving Logan like that? He's my son too. I complied with the court's decision that it's better for a mother to have custody, even though you insisted on not giving me parental rights. But you wouldn't let me see him, no matter how many times I asked. My worry proved justified. You're not fit to be Logan's mother. Just shut up. You should just pay the child support. I'd pay any amount for Logan, but you left him without care. You don't even know how critical his condition was, and you're out on your affair trip. That day, when Logan's condition deteriorated, I panicked and called an ambulance. When we got to the hospital and while he was being treated, I called her parents and Andrew, Logan's father. He was surprised when I told them my sister was on a trip with my husband. After that, Logan, who was discharged from the hospital in good health, was resting at Andrew's and his parents' house. Wait a minute, you're saying Logan's okay? Then whose? My husband asked, puzzled, staring at the crematorium. It's her grandmother. Our grandmother. Mother to me and my sister, and great-grandmother to Maya and Logan, I replied. She was in her advanced years and bedridden, living in a nursing facility. She passed away recently from old age. Despite being bedridden, our grandma was quite lucid and doted on her great-grandchildren, Maya and Logan. Whenever we visited her at the nursing home, she would light up with joy. Her sudden departure left us, my parents and Maya, in deep sorrow, unable to do anything but grieve. Logan, who had been ill, couldn't attend the funeral. However, since he'd called my sister to the crematorium, Andrew was there. His fever had subsided, and he looked well. You tricked us. No one said Logan had died. My sister accused us with her eyes, but it was we who had the right to accuse. I didn't hear about Grandma's death either, she snapped back. I tried calling both of you several times to tell you about Grandma's passing, but the line was always busy. Considering how kind she was to you, it's unfathomable that you're this late. Enough. You're all making fools of us. Logan, let's go home. You don't want to stay with such a man. You want to be with Mom, right? Andrew, give Logan back right now. Will you ever stop? The one who scolded my sister, who was bearing down on Andrew, was her father. Do you still think you can keep Logan with you after all of this? What you've done could have gotten you in legal trouble for child abandonment. You've proven to be an unfit mother. Never think you'll be allowed near Logan again. Logan will be raised by Andrew. Dad, how could you? We've decided to fully support Andrew and hire a lawyer. You are no longer our daughter. We're cutting ties with you. Mom. My sister's face went pale at her parents' harsh words. I stood in front of her with a firm stance. I'm divorcing my husband, so why don't the two of you stick together? You seem fine leaving your children behind to go on an overseas trip. Upon hearing this, my husband burst out, Emily, wait, it was just a lapse in judgment. Lily and I were just fooling around. The ones who matter to me are you and Mia. Then my sister also started shouting, what do you mean fooling around? You told me you no longer loved Emily and that I was the only one you loved. Stop the noise. I just love my daughter. Don't mess with me. As the storm reignited between my husband and my sister, we left the scene with my grandmother's ashes. After that, despite many disagreements with the help of a lawyer, I managed to settle everything. Logan went to live with his dad. I thought he might feel sad being away from his mother, but he was rather pleased. It turned out my sister wasn't functioning as a mother at all. My husband and I had our disputes. Well, more accurately, my husband was absent. After being scolded by both my parents and his, he was feeling down. Then our daughter landed the knockout punch. I don't need daddy. She might be only 6 years old, but girls mature quickly. She must have understood her father's despicable actions in her own way. When our daughter looked at my husband like he was a bug, I couldn't help but laugh. For my husband, who adored his daughter, no, my ex-husband, there could be no greater punishment. He was allowed to see his daughter, but whether she wanted to see him was up to her. And so, the storm came to an end. Maya and I returned to my parents' home and are living peacefully. My parents are thrilled to live with Mia. She's starting elementary school next year, so we're excited about the preparations. I plan to find a job when she starts school. Logan comes by every now and then with Andrew. He looks totally different. His face is brighter and he's always smiling. Meanwhile, my sister and my ex-husband seem to have ended their relationship quite easily. I guess it was really just a fling for my ex-husband. Perhaps upset about being disliked by his daughter, he dumped my sister without hesitation. However, his despicable affair with his wife's sister became known at his company, which questioned his character. He was relocated to a remote area that will make it even more difficult for him to see his daughter. As for my sister, after being abandoned by everyone, she seemed to live like an empty shell for a while. Then she disappeared. We filed a missing persons report, but I have a feeling we'll never find my sister. That's just the feeling I get.